So welcome to this edition, I guess, of the remote workforce. I'm really excited about this topic. It's something I know a lot about. I've been doing it for 22 years, first with IBM and then with several other companies. And it's exciting to see the growth that we've had in the acceptance of remote work in the hybrid workplace, which is where I think it's going to go over the past year. So let's get started. It's nice to meet everybody. I did turn everybody's video off. So obviously we've had this happen. This pandemic has really accelerated working from home over the past year, and it's probably a good thing. I think we've squeezed about some people said 10 years. I think it's probably 4 years, 5 years. I think we were on a good accelerated track, but it's definitely pushed us there. Now, this is what most people think happens at work from home, or at least they did last March. I think more people have come to accept that you can work from home and not play around all the time. But there are some advantages and disadvantages. One thing that I fought when I was working for IBM back in, let's see, I went remote in 97, 98, I think. My problem was working too much. I'd kind of get nervous or anxious that someone couldn't see that I was working, and I wanted to make sure they knew I was being productive at home. And I'd work from 7 in the morning until 7 or 8 at night, and that's not very healthy. So you don't want that. You also don't want the flip side where people are taking advantage of you and just not doing anything at home. So hopefully I can cover some good techniques for you to use during that presentation. So I noticed some of the polls so far. People want to learn about building high performance teams, find out what employees really want. I'm going to cover some of that. What are the national statistics? And that'll back up what employees want. And I'll cover a little bit about what the best software is, sort of a good place to start. I've helped a lot of companies put in good enterprise 2.0 workflow type products. I'll talk about that. So what is it that most people want to know the most about remote work? I think there's a fear. There's definitely a fear factor of lost productivity. Am I really getting what I need to get out of my employees to meet my revenue goals, or whatever targets I've set, which it decreases profitability. You feel like you've got a loss of control because they're not there. You can't go over and sit at their desk and find out what they're doing. You kind of have to make an effort to go electronic and find out what they're doing. And as I said before, you don't want to feel like you're being taken advantage of. So the agenda for this presentation, I do a quick introduction of myself so you know who I am and who's presenting here today. Give you some quick numbers that I've pulled from the Wall Street Journal and some other magazines and periodicals from recent. Context as it relates to organizational resiliency. You'll see how important it is to get everybody on the same page. Some of the elements of remote work and a mindset for organizational high performance is something you really have to bake into your culture. And if it's possible, we'll have an open discussion at the end. I'll just open up the chat if it's not already open and see if we can get some questions going. So a little bit about me. I graduated from University of Maryland. I went to work for IBM, was with them for a decade and a half. With IBM, I spent a lot of time with different Fortune 500 companies. And I was on the Atlanta Olympics team. I did beach and indoor volleyball, wrote all the software, including television, press, all that stuff. It was a once in a lifetime opportunity. Once was enough. I've lived in 10 different states, 15 different cities. So pretty wide background. I've done a lot of things, software engineering, product management, marketing, organizational change management. Love to ride motorcycles, and my two sons here in Atlanta live with me on occasion. They're 10 and 12, and sometimes we go camp underneath the wing of the airplane, a place called Oshkosh every year, so it's fun. All right, enough about me. Oh, Emory. Emory's an awesome school. If you decide to get an MBA, that's the place to go. Some of my offerings that I specialize in: strategy, product management, organizational health, software technology vendor selection. This seminar, hybrid remote workforce enablement, which would include leadership processes and underlying software. technology strategy for successful M&A. So a lot of M&As happen and they fail because they get to the technology piece and they can't integrate it. And leadership effectiveness. So let's get to some statistics. So Fortune magazine did a poll recently in March. It's just like last month. 39% of the population are working remotely. 51% are college graduates. I gave a talk to several CEOs a couple of weeks ago, and about half of them ran companies with manufacturing. So obviously you've got some employees that are going to have to go to work on site. And just a word about that, I'm not really going to go deep into that in this presentation, but one thing you want to think about are the people who have to show up. You know, they may not think it's fair that some people get to work from home, some people have to show up. Do something nice for them, free food. There's different things you can do to make them, you know, feel elevated, that they're wanted to go on site, and, you know, reward them for that. Just like the frontline people that we cheered for last March, April, and May. You know, and everybody at 5 o'clock, they opened up the windows and rang bells, you know, for all the frontline people. You got to take care of them. They're your family. So 36% always want to be in the office. Those are the extroverts. Those are the people that just, they've got to have that people contact, you know. 18% never want to be in the office. Those are the severely introverted people. Probably the 20-year technology programming veterans, the ones you slide pizza under the door and they just get stuff done. And 42%, which it's almost half. I would say it is half because, you know, this is only a poll of 2,600 and it's probably pretty accurate, but I'd say about half the people want to have a hybrid where they work maybe 2 or 3 days a week in the office, a couple of days, 3 days from home. And I sincerely think that's going to become the norm. I'm someone who can work from home forever. When I was at IBM, I remember one time I went 2 weeks without ever starting my car. But you kind of, you know, lose touch with people. You know, my team was in Raleigh, New York, San Francisco, and we were online with each other all the time. But it was so nice when you saw them at a trade show. And it's nice to go into an office and to see people. So I think this is gonna become the norm, is a hybrid. 25% say they're more productive at home. They don't have the interruptions. Cal Newport wrote an excellent book on working from home in a quiet environment, turning off email, being really focused. And you do that, you know, the antithesis of that would be the open workplace where everybody's in like a pit. You can't really get any thought, heavy work going in that environment. There's too many interruptions. 67% plan to resume the previous levels of business travel. So I think the airlines are going to pick up. I don't know how long it'll take them to get back where they were, but people want to get out. I know a lot of business owners who not only want to get out, they want the salespeople to come sit down with them so that they can read their body language and see if they trust them or not. Studies by Harvard, you know, workers are working more from home. I think a lot of people are like I am. You kind of get nervous working from home. You don't want to get fired, laid off. You don't want people to think you're not productive and get passed over for raises. That's another reason, you know, to go into the office. You need visibility. If you want to progress up the management chain, you need some kind of visibility that you're just not going to get when you're online, sitting at home all the time over Zoom. A Slack survey, this is along the same ways. 83%, way over half, don't want to go back to the old way of working. They like a flexible work model. And this pretty much just backs up the same as the Fortune article. And I've seen similar numbers out of the Wall Street Journal. So how do you start to crack this nut of making sure that you keep your team, you know, high performance when they're kind of spread out? So research indicates that people need 3 things to really stimulate and keep them engaged. One is interesting work, obviously, recognition for a job well done, but being let in on things that are going on in the company, that is so key. If you don't understand the context of the work that you do, how are you going to come up with new ways of doing things? You don't know how you matter except maybe to your first line manager or the next line manager, or maybe your immediate area. But what if you knew kind of the direction that management was going? Perhaps you might learn something that you're doing immediately, that you could say, wait a minute, if I did this a little bit differently, it supports that overall strategy. And I think that's what Zig is alluding to here. They become much more engaged when they understand the company holistically. So some of the forces, everything is suffering entropy. Entropy is, the physics term in thermodynamics that you can set things up in a perfect little area grid. And as soon as you let go of it, it starts falling apart. Things age. There's the new normal. I've got an Apple M1 Mac. I got it about a month ago, and now already it's just normal. It's lightning fast, but it's already normal to me. Your products and offerings are going to experience the same thing. People get to a new level of comfort, and then they start getting bored. They want something new. And this is internally in your work and your culture. It's also with your products and your services. So you constantly have to be sort of reinventing yourself. Government legislation, we've had a new change of political, leaders, I guess. They work for us, but they're going to unleash all kinds of new legislation that wasn't there before. The economic climate is going to change. Political forces, technology drive. There's more technology than you can shake a stick at these days. I've gotten to where I tell people, don't even look for technology to bring in. First, define your business problem, and then go find a technology. And I guarantee you'll find a short list of 10 applications that'll solve that problem. Then you have a different problem of figuring out which one you want to choose. But we're swimming in technology these days. Harvard published a good transformative business models guide, and they listed like what they found to be the top 6. And notice 5 and 6: a more collaborative ecosystem and an agile and adaptive organization. If you have a hybrid workforce, and you have employees that are working remotely, the closer they collaborate, the more they know what's going on, and they're agile, the stronger your organization is going to be, whether they're remote or on site. You just can't get past that. So by implementing a more agile, collaborative environment, it doesn't matter where your employees work. You're going to be much stronger and benefit from it. So there's 3 main configurations. Obviously, 68% of executives want everybody to be on site at least 3 days a week. Some like CEO of Netflix wants everybody on site every single minute of the day. He doesn't believe in remote work at all, which he can get away with because he has a workforce and a pay plan, compensation that's the top. Everybody wants to work there no matter what. So they'll struggle, even though they want to work remotely. They'll work for for him because it's such an incredible experience. But if 2 or 3 companies come along and they start to pick up and get past Netflix as far as the work environment, he's going to start having to maybe look at hybrid, look at remote. But some companies have that. So the advantages, think about marketing this from a green perspective. Everybody wants to be clean, save the environment. You save gas. Think about how much gas we've saved over the past year. It's amazing how much energy. I remember I think it was April, May, it was early May of last year. I walked out and it struck me that I didn't feel this acidic, nature in the air that you normally, have when you go out, in places like Atlanta or LA. And speaking of LA, I saw a picture someone took from, the mountain overlooking LA. You could actually see the outline of the shore. I've never seen that before. I don't know about you, but I think it's been years since I've seen the ocean. So it's a good thing. Less distractions, you have less office space. There was, in the group of CEOs I talked to a few weeks ago, 2 of them were looking at, not breaking their leases, but their leases were ending. So they were just going to cut their office space in half. So that's a good savings there. And they're going to invest more in a remote type of work environment, WeWork type, something along those lines. They're still trying to figure it out. You have happy employees, And here's one that really struck a chord with a couple of them. You now can access a worldwide talent pool. Many of these companies that were so focused and so mentally, stuck on local talent. You've got to work in the office. You've got to be here. If we hire you in New York and we work in Chicago, then we've got to move you to Chicago. No, you don't really have to do that. Just fly them in, maybe for the first month to get everybody acclimated. And then maybe they come in for a week and they work from New York for the other 3 weeks. This really opens up your talent pool in a big way. So another thing about the commute time, think about the flexibility of being able to come in at, say, 10 or 11 o'clock instead of 8. A lot of people want to think that they're getting 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, 40 hours. What if people started online at 8 and they came in at 11 and worked until 4 and then went home and worked another couple of hours? They're going to say, some people, if they have an hour and a half commute during normal 7 a.m., 5 p.m. work time, they come in later, maybe they can save 45 minutes of time. So you either get that 45 minutes back as a leader, or they get 45 minutes back as an individual. And that could be a happy win-win situation on either side. So the disadvantages, obviously communication, they're not right there. You can't just walk into their office and say, hi, let's have a chat. Security is a big thing. You definitely need a VPN type of environment where you secure your assets at that site. There are ways to do it through the cloud. And one thing, I'll just go ahead and say this now. Amazon Cloud Services has more security built into it than just about any company will have on site. And the reason is they constantly update the software available in the cloud, which includes the latest security updates. And that is the best. They know what the zero-day attacks are. They're on top of it. A lot of local applications on site, it's going to get done whenever people get to it. And if you have a really top team, they're always patching the software, but you kind of they have to control what's going on. So it's a little bit more difficult. That's what got Equifax into serious trouble. They had one Linux remote server that was somewhere in a data center someone forgot about. And it happened to have a major security flaw that somebody found. They broke into it and then broke into the whole Equifax network. You just don't know what's there. So security, move to the cloud, good thing. Other disadvantages, you need accountability standards and processes, productivity, loneliness. And if you're 100% remote, it's hard to build a talent and leadership pipeline. It's just hard. You really need to sort of understand who they are. It takes some body language. It takes some in person, with that. So we'll get back to that. That's why I'm positive the hybrid workplace is what's going to survive this. So this is what you don't want. I'm sure that's not the best way to do work, although I'm sure it's fun. And it is good family balance. So maybe some people can get away with it here and there. But this is what we've been doing for the past year, on Zoom, and people have gotten pretty comfortable with it, and people are starting to learn what works and what doesn't work. And there's a norming period. When I first started working from home, I think it took me about 2 years to really get into a good flow that was good for me and good for work. Mostly it was good for work, and I would suffer, but there's some back and forth there that people get going with, unless you have a good process and a good organization to follow. So Agile has this one principle that I don't really think it applies as much anymore. It did 20 years ago when it was first talked about, but there's this thing called the Cockburn-Ambler communication graph. And it goes from in person, talking at the bottom where you're working closely together, all the way up to the top where you're remote, and things take longer. You don't have the body language. Technology and bandwidth has just gotten to the point to where we can be pretty real time. This lower left I've got a picture of Lotus Same Time, which is what I used on IBM back in, what was this, 2000? So 22 years ago. I think I had 128 kilobit ISDN, something like that. We didn't use the video because that just slowed it down to where, nothing worked. But we had chat. We had Lotus 123 and freelance graphics. I'm really dating myself now. I think that's still around though. But we could remote drive each other's freelance graphics. So this is when I was in IBM software group marketing. And a lot of times you get into a group where like 5 or 6 people are talking and you're brainstorming, and someone comes up with a great idea and someone else, maybe 2 or 3 people come up with the same idea at the same time, but someone says it just perfectly. And you're like, wait a minute, what'd you say here? Just type it. And you could turn it over and load at the same time, and they could type it in to the presentation graphics remotely. So this is someone in San Francisco that I'm working with in Atlanta and someone else in Raleigh. So this technology has been around for 22 years, but the bandwidth has finally gotten to the point to where it's not a struggle for life anymore. You don't have to be a technologist. You don't have to work for IBM or HP. This is available to everybody. So the technology is there. Now we need leadership and the processes to catch up. So how do you do that? You have to build it into your core values of your culture. So there's a concept called commander's intent that I really love this. Think of the commander's intent as the antithesis of micromanagement. And there's a great example of commander's intent. And just to let you know what it is, commander's intent is where, the battlefield, a commander would say, when this battle is over with, we need to have taken these strongholds. And then that's all they say. Whereas a micromanager or, an experienced officer might say, I need you to take 3 guys. I want you to flank this hill, come up around the backside. And when these other people come around this side, you attack them. What happens if things change? All of a sudden, they're not going to really understand what to do because all of a sudden they're lost. Their compass got tumbled. So D-Day was a perfect example of commander's intent. They'd planned D-Day for 2 years, at least 2 years. And it was an absolute, I know what word I want to say, but I'm not going to say it here. It was just a travesty of nuttiness. I mean, they had people airdropping into zones that weren't even on the map. They had the gliders were gliding into places that weren't the places where they were supposed to be. There were misdrops of supplies, everywhere but where they were supposed to be. I mean, it was just completely all over the place. But what they had done in the 2 years prior is they had said that these are the crossroads that we need. These are the bridges we need to take out. They gave like the objectives and then left it up to the people to get it done. The troops got it done. So what happened is all these people picked themselves up and they said, hey, let's get these guys, you can be in my squad now. I don't know what squad we are, but we're going to go take this road, and you guys go take that. They figured it out themselves. And, that's what made D-Day successful is these guys all picked themselves back up. They reoriented themselves. They knew what the objectives were. This is the kind of mindset that is so powerful in an organization. If all of your frontline people understand what the CEO wants, then they can tailor their activities to propel that forward. You need a simple strategic plan. It can't be complicated. If it's too complicated, it's just not, going to sink in. They may read it, and they get to page 4 or 5 and think, okay, yeah, sure. And then it just sort of goes right over them and it's too complicated for them. So they just keep doing the same thing they're doing. They don't have any strong context. You need strong leadership to do this. It's not easy to distill down to the essential elements so that everybody understands. And they can't be micromanagers. there's a lot of elements of strong leadership that are crucial. It's not, well, can't say it's crucial. You're going to be successful if you have a strong leadership team, put it that way. And a results-based culture, what result do you want? Don't tell me how to do it. Tell me what result you want to experience based on, my work and everybody's work as a collective. And lead by example. You want to set the right tone. You want to have growth mindset. One thing that I was very impressed with in the last team I was with in IBM, which was a product management organization that covered all of the WebSphere, middleware, and development tools worldwide. And you get on a conference call, and there might be 50 people on that call, from senior VP all the way down to the engineers that are the architects that are building some of these tools. And I actually witnessed one presentation where one of the architects, he's like 5 levels of management down from the senior VP. And the senior VP was, saying a few things, and then this architect guy piped up and said, I don't think that's going to work. And then the senior VP was just like, well, why not? That is a level of trust that just isn't in a lot of organizations. People that are those levels apart, the lower levels are typically going to just keep their mouth shut. They don't want to be stomped on. But if your leadership provides an environment of trust where you can disagree with something, as long as you have a good reason and you can talk it out, we came up, I don't remember what the solution was, but we came up with a great solution because 3 or 4 other people piped in, and they're like, yeah, actually, that's not a bad way of looking at it. If we added this feature and took that one away, and it was an awesome meeting. But there was that level of trust. There wasn't any ego. The senior VP he's there to make this product successful, the company successful. You need that level of trust. I'll just put in a quick little ad right here. I do work with some people who do wonderful visualizations of strategy. They can take a 10, 12 page, 15 page strategy document and turn it into one picture that the rank and file can look at and understand. They know where they fit into the grand scheme of things, and it just clicks. This literally is a picture's worth 1,000 words. And to get your whole organization on the same page, especially if they're remote, is worth its weight in gold. So enabling the aha moment. I put up Enterprise 2.0. I've got a lot of experience doing that back in the late 28, well, what was that, 2006, 2008, and a few others in the early teens, I guess. But it was Enterprise 2.0. I think it's up to 3.0 now, maybe 4.0. It doesn't matter. It's enterprise collaboration. And that's it's talking more about the technology that glues the organization together, but you've got to have the processes and the culture that need to be glued together. Well, they know how to be glued together. Technology just supports it. You want to enable that aha moment. When I worked with one group in the Fortune 50 company that does, let's just say hotels. The manager of that group would come in and debrief them on what the CEO was telling most of the business leaders, as far as like how many bookings they had, what the revenue numbers were, new markets they were trying to capture. And this is his group was a group of programmers. They programmed iPhones and Android devices and web pages. A lot of companies don't bring their technology teams in on the business side. Well, it was funny because this one meeting I was in, the manager gave a great briefing of what the business direction and strategy was at the time and how they were using technology to support it. And one of the architects was just like, wow, why have we been fighting this architecture decision? We don't need to do that anymore, because if they're going in this direction, we don't even have to bother with that anymore. And we can do this instead. Those are the kind of aha moments that save the organization a lot of time and effort. Because otherwise, if he didn't know, they would have kept fighting that problem until they got it fixed and into production, and then no one would have used it. But they could have used that time to do something more productive. Removing the on-site requirement. There's another Fortune company that I work, Fortune 10, well, Fortune 50 company that I worked with that, let's just say they're in the beverages business. And they were using an application that was internal to the firewall. You could only use this application if you were on site. One person had to enter in all this information from all the external vendors. So it was a department that traded assets from external companies with this company. And the workflow is that they would send emails or phone calls or whatever else. And, this lady would have to type in all this information and manage this application so that, it would run through legal and everything else. So when I analyzed their business processes and mapped it all out, I realized that most of the work could be done by their vendors. And the only way to make that happen was to find a cloud application. I actually found 3. And one was by a company named SAS, which you'd think they're statistics, but they actually had a pretty nice little collaboration tool that boosted this business process. We had it pen tested by Price Waterhouse, so Coca-Cola. They want, dang it, sorry, they want to move everything to the cloud anyway, for security reasons, for a number of reasons, maintenance wise. So that enabled everybody internal to the company to then work from anywhere. Didn't matter where they worked from. And customers could log into the site, do what they needed to do, and push the process through. And people were automatically notified. You didn't have to manually say, oh, we're at this next phase, let's send an email or a phone call and say, hey, you need to take care of this work. It was automated. Just, we've got these phones, everything else today, Bing, okay, oh, I have to take care of this next piece of process. I mean, that technology is there. You just have to enable your teams. Another really good thing is having frontline managers that are active coaches. They listen, they support their people. One really great group that I was a part of, the management was really good at sharing that information of where they were going. So we would have, this happened to be a marketing organization, so it's a little easier to describe than if it was another organization, but you'll get the point. We always had some kind of marketing program going on when we're bringing out one set of products or another. And we knew what the major milestones were. The middle managers would break those milestones down into what was relevant to them, but they didn't lose the context. They kept the context, but they broke it down into areas that they were responsible for. When it got down to my team, my manager would get all of this on a call. He didn't go to each individual person and break down the work and say, you work on this, you work on that. It wasn't individual phone calls where no one in the group knew what each other was doing. We would have a group call and everybody knew what everybody else was doing. And we would sort of think, okay, yeah, I can get that presentation done by Friday. And someone else might pipe up and say, well, wait a minute, how are you going to get that done by Friday? Because, these other 2 slides are kind of dependent on that other thing. I'd be like, oh yeah, yeah, so maybe Tuesday. But since everybody knew what everybody else is working on, it created this collaboration between us that if one person knew something that someone else didn't, you instantly knew that and you could rely on each other and help each other. Or if a piece of work came down that we didn't really know who would be the best person, someone could volunteer. But it is so much more efficient and effective to get that work out to the right person using those methods than to have a manager just decide, you should do this and you should do that, and I'm going to manage it, and just to send me a Friday, TSP report and tell me where you are. That's just not as powerful, and it doesn't work as well with remote and hybrid teams. So one thing you can do to, sort of drive engagement with the different groups, if you don't have, not everybody has a marketing group to, drive these. And so it's a little more difficult if you're in customer service or, if you're a product development group that, you're sort of in between sprints maybe. Use an innovation sprint. Come up, get your people together and evaluate where you are in the market. Are you having marketing problems? Are you having, are there opportunities in building new features? Get everybody together, sort of evaluate, identify, organize, and then, go through the cycle, put them through the cycle. People love it when they're engaged in something innovative because they want to feel like they're contributing to something magical. And it is magical when you innovate the right thing that saves everybody time, pushes the business forward, especially if they feel like they're engaged with it. And I've got a number of books from the Strategizer series that, you can go through the different quadrants and, break it down. So that's a great idea to use to sort of, keep everybody rallied behind the same principle. This one I kind of left in here. This is just a thought process. I'm starting to kind of come back from the whole agile framework and rethinking. There are a lot of bright minds in the industry that are kind of rethinking it, but it's still effective. You basically break down whatever big goals you have into smaller goals, and then each group, I guess you'd say, like the group I mentioned earlier in marketing, we would have like 5 different deliverables, and they might be advertising content, marketing messages, what have you. But we could break that down like programmers do. Programmers have different pieces of code. Some take really quickly, some take a little bit longer. But you'll figure out, okay, what can I do in the next 5 days? Well, I can take these 3 modules because this one takes 1 day, this one takes 3 days, that one takes 1 day, move it over, get it done, and then I'm done with that sprint. And you see some velocity. So, that's something that you can use. It's a concept out there. I'm monitoring it to see kind of which way the market goes because I feel like it's maturing. So, engaged employees, growth mindset, it's a strategic advantage, no matter how you look at it. You can create a competitive advantage using remote work. You got to get out of the short-term thinking and having a fixed mindset. Make sure that you monitor yourself and your leaders to make sure they don't have a fixed mindset. Fixed mindset is something where you say, okay, you're not going to be any good at this because you've never been good at it. How do you know? I mean, that's a growth mindset. Carol Dweck has a great book on growth mindset. And you need to be more open-minded and give people the opportunity to grow into something that you think maybe they might not have grown into before. But if they really show passion for it, they really want to do it, let them go for it. It's one way to keep them engaged, and especially if they're remote. I mean, this all goes back to if they're remote or hybrid, you really want to keep them engaged in any way possible because that's going to move your business forward and keep them engaged. Yeah, I read a Wall Street Journal article yesterday. There's a lady whose job tripled, I guess, during the lockdowns because it all just kind of fell on her and she took it. Well, she's leaving now. And so they had to find a replacement. And the replacement's only going to take over, a third or a fourth, I think 40% of what she was doing. And they're going to be left, finding the rest. That's not a good engagement model from that company standpoint. So old habits change. This sort of gets into the organizational change management that I've had experience with. You really need executive sponsors who understand it. They have to be visible to everybody all the way up to the front line. You don't want change to happen in an organization where it's siloed, where you only hear about what you're going to change from your manager, even your manager's manager. So make sure the whole leadership team is constantly talking about what you're trying to accomplish, what changes are going to happen. You need capable external partners, find external help if you need it. And these are some of the internal ripple effects of change that you just need to think about when you implement this process. My goal for a company is to learn the tools to constantly be in a state ready to change so that they will know, the employees and the culture will know role requirements are changing, skill sets, mindsets, and that nature. And to wrap it up, I guess, these are some of the software tools that I've found really effective with organizations. Microsoft Teams, I'm really impressed. I'm an Apple user, but Microsoft Teams is really, really good. Google Meet is not as mature as Microsoft Teams, but it's still not bad. Zoom, obviously everybody uses Zoom these days. Slack, when built out, there's a lot of plugins that you can add to Slack, and I've never become like a Slack expert, but there's so many tools that you can enable within Slack that I think that's sort of a personal cultural choice of using that or not. Lucid Chart and Lucid Spark, I love. Airtable is brilliant, sort of a Excel-based database spreadsheet kind of thing. Trello, Dropbox, Google, those are a good list to start with. But as I mentioned before, there are a lot of good Enterprise 2.0 collaboration tools, depending on your business process, that are really good to look at. So that's all I've got. If anybody has any questions, I don't know if you can type them into chat or not. All right. Well, that's all I've got. I really appreciate your time, and hope you learned a lot. If you have any questions, please drop me a line, mark@travis-company.com, and have an awesome day. Thanks. Bye.